Hey guys, this is Yoda. In this video, I'll talk about what I mean by sim your character, how I use the simulation craft and Raidbots website, what types of sims and what types of settings I use in my sims to get information about my characters. The first thing, the very basic is you need this add-on simulation craft. And that what that does is when you type /simc, which I'll do in game right now, you can't see because I have a chat blocker. It'll pop out this window, which basically exports to a website all the information about your character, like your current talents, your saved loadouts. If you have talent loadout EX, it saves all those too. What items are in your bags, etc. So I'm going to Control C this, copy it, and next we're going to go to Raidbots. So we're going to Raidbots. I will enable that. Okay, so we're on Raidbots now, and you can choose any type of sim. Personally, Advanced Sim, if you're like watching this video, Advanced Sim is probably not going to be for you. It's generally used by theory crafters to get some like very specific information or check like certain things. Top Gear is going to be your most valuable one. Quick Sim is nice if you want to check like quickly what the sim is doing, or if you want to check some information, which I'll show you how to do later. Stat weights, they consider to be a legacy tool, but I still find to be very, very useful. It's nice to see, like, don't use this to make like direct gear decisions for your character, but it is nice to see like what kind of stats are good for what kind of situations, which I'll show you. Gear compare is basically replaced by Top Gear. It can be used instead of Top Gear if you're trying to be like, if you don't want to type it in Top Gear, but Top Gear is going to cover everything that Gear compare can do. All right, so first we're going to go to Top Gear. Then all that information that we copied from the game, we're going to post here. Boom, we just copy paste. So what that does is it copy pastes everything from your bags, all the gear you have equipped, and all of your trinkets, all of your rings, basically all the gear you have. And it puts all the information here. So next, if you want to say like, hey Yoda, what trinket should I use between Nether Prism, Another Prism Ritual Forge, Seafarer Pacemaker, etc., etc., etc.? Well, you can just select any of these options, boom, 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 just click all of them. And then down here, you just click Run the Sim, find Top Gear, and it'll tell you which one is best. Now, the difficulty comes in the settings here. So first, there's the first setting here, which is replace existing gems and enhance chance. Personally, if you click this and then you click a bunch of stuff, it is going to make the sim take 8 years. Like if you click simply this and then you click like all these, right? This is already, and just click like a bunch of these gems, you're going to get a lot of possible combinations. I don't know why I clicked all these, but you're going to get a lot of combinations, and your sim is going to take forever. So first, I recommend not clicking this. You can check certain talents. You can compare talents. Like I could compare how much damage my raid build will do versus my M plus build, for instance, on single target. I could see how much I was losing if I wanted to do that. And I could also check certain other settings. So fight style is the main setting you're going to mess with. It's either Patrick or Dungeon Slice. I would not use any of these. These are like kind of inconsistent. Target dummy is also viable. What target dummy does is basically turns everything off, no raid buffs, no consumables, whatever. You can use this. I wouldn't use this in a Top Gear sim. You would use this in a quick sim to just like compare yourself with the sim, how much they're doing to the target dummy versus you. The main two we're going to be concerned with are Patrick and Dungeon Slice. Dungeon Slice, a lot of people don't like Dungeon Slice, but in my experience, Dungeon Slice is actually not bad. When I compare my overalls at the end of a dungeon to a Dungeon Slice sim, they are, like, my damage breakdown is usually relatively similar. So I would say if you're lazy, you can just compare everything on Dungeon Slice and make every decision based on that. If you want to get a little bit more specific, then you'll have to go Patchwork one target. This is one boss 5 minutes. This is the standard single target sim that many raiders use just as a default for their third profile. Like if you see a sim spreadsheet online, generally it's with this settings. For raid buffs, if you're feeling tryhard, you can click and unclick everything that you would actually have access to. I would say the biggest things to worry about with raid buffs, since generally like having or not having this isn't going to change your decisions too much. The biggest things to change or not change are power infusion, if you're going to have that. Sky Fury, whether or not you're going to have that, because Sky Fury would change your stat weights. For instance, if your class benefits a lot from Sky Fury, then you may need more haste to cover like a lack of procs or something. So make sure this one is correct, whether you will or will not have Sky Fury. and bloodlust. So this is a big thing. If you sim with bloodlust, then the sim is going to lust on pull, right? Unless you do some weird settings. Which means if you do a low fight length, like a lot of people like to sim, oh yeah, I'll sim 1 minute 30 because my character is usually going to be fighting for a minute 30 very often, and they take bloodlust on. So this basically is only going to sim your character. It's going to make decisions for your character only on the first pull of the dungeon, like when you lust. It won't be what you wouldn't do one boss, you'd probably do like 6 or 7 or 8 or something, right? So this is something that would do. You have to be very careful here. I would not take bloodlust if you're going to do a short fight length. If you are taking bloodlust, especially if you're saving for Mythic Plus, I would recommend 8 to 10 minute fight length. That way bloodlust doesn't get like overly weighted. 10 minutes is probably extreme. I would say like 8 minutes is probably fine if you're going to check bloodlust. That way, like the sim will basically do like one pull with lust, and then it'll do much more longer without bloodlust, which is how an actual key goes, right? You have like one pull out of every, not many of the pulls you're actually doing have bloodlust. So in my opinion, 8 minutes, which is, this is completely made up by me, very arbitrary, is roughly correct, roughly good for if you're simming with bloodlust. And then you could sim yourself on single target, or 6 boss generally is okay, and then you could check 10 target as well. In general, also, I find that people tend to overweight their AoE sim. If you care about overall damage, then like 6 boss and 10 boss are going to be more important for you. If you care about timing the key, say 1 target is probably going to be the most important for you. There are also a few other things that you need to be aware of in this section. So Dusk and Dawn Thread. Honestly, embellishments are kind of whatever. If you are wearing these 2 trinkets, you should probably click something that's accurate. Like, no one has 0% mischance on intent. You should probably do like 10 to 20. If you're actually using it, Selia's, click whatever stat you're going to actually use. And that's mostly the things that you would change here. So, for instance, let's say you're playing Dark Ranger BM Hunter, and you're like, hey Yoda, I have a Perfidious Projector, Nether Prism, Ritual Forge, and a Pacemaker. What should I use? Well, we're going to check single target. So we sim, Patchwork, 1 boss, 8 minutes. I don't really care about Skyfear as a hunter, so it's going to be clicked. Bloodlust is clicked, but I also have 8 minute fight length, so it's fine. So we'll check single target. Okay, fine, top gear. So one other thing about the sim, by the way, is that in the sim, your character is permanently in combat with that number of targets. Obviously, this is very not like what's happening in an actual Mythic Plus key. The main differences are if things happen to proc every minute or every 2 minutes, for instance, such as Pacemaker, which is in the sim, then that trinket will generally over sim compared to its actual performance in the key, because especially for Hunter, for instance, you're using Call of the Wild every 1 minute, no matter what. And Pacemaker just so happens to proc every minute, right? But in an actual keystone, you're not actually able to push Call of the Wild every minute, so you're going to get desync from it. So I would say Pacemaker is definitely going to oversim a little bit. So remember, this is single target, so from this sim, we can say, oh look, the raid build does 3.1% more damage than my Mythic Plus build on pure single target, which is kind of crazy, by the way. That's one of the reasons Dark Ranger BM is so good in Mythic Plus. Next, we're going to sim AoE. Sim 6 bosses. Then you could change any number of talents. You could be like, oh, let's see how this dropping this talent does versus this one. This is a change a lot of people would do, right? On AoE. So let's run that sim. Takes a while. If you have a membership, it helps a lot with how fast this takes. I do have my own membership, but if you're in a guild, they generally will have a shared membership for this type of thing. We're gonna run the sim again. This is just an example of a Top Gear sim. So we did single target. Now we're doing AoE. I did like randomly add a combo for the AoE one, so it's gonna take a while. Generally, if you don't mess with gems and enchants, and you don't, or if you don't have like 30 million talents selected, then the sim isn't going to take that long. But if you do click the things that I suggested before, then it is going to take a while. So here we can see Pacemaker is actually seems decent on AoE, slightly ahead of Nether Prism. However, as we mentioned before, Pacemaker is going to oversim because in the sim, you push your cooldowns no matter what every 1 minute, and you are in combat with mobs that are alive for that minute. Which is not accurate for an actual keystone, which means, in my opinion, Nether Prism is still superior to the Pacemaker in my situation. All right, so that is the basics of a Top Gear sim. Next, we're gonna cover how I use the rest of them. So we'll do a quick sim here. The main use for quick sim, in my opinion, is first of all, is really quick. It doesn't take very long. If you just want to check some information, that's fine. You can do it. Another thing you can do is you can look at your damage breakdown in the quick sim and then compare it to your actual damage breakdown in a keystone, see if you're missing anything that, the robot is doing something different. You can look at the damage breakdown, compare this to your actual damage breakdown in a key. You can look at their buff up times, compare that to your buff up time. You can look at how they play their opener, compare that to your opener, etc. Then another useful thing here is you can go to the HTML report. This is mainly if you are trying to get really nerdy and check priority damage. Here you can see that I'm doing 16 whatever DPS and 5,800,000 to the main target. There's a lot of other things you can do. I just clicked something random. There's a lot of other things you can check down here that I'm not going to get into. But mainly this priority target thing, I haven't found a way to figure this out without clicking on the HTML report. So if you're looking for a class and you want to see like, oh, I want to see which one does the most funnel damage, then you would have to do quick sim, like quick sim, just do a bunch of quick sims and then check like every HTML report which one has the highest number there. If you wanted to check actual information about that. So that is the main thing that I would use quick sim for. Generally, also, by the way, recently I have been doing just Lust and 8-minute fight length. So Lust does to get overweighted. If you want, you can do like less than 5 minutes or one boss 5 minute, whatever you want. You can also just do dungeon slice if you're lazy like me. The next thing we'll talk about is Droptimizer, which is this is kind of useful, not really for seeing like what decisions to make with what characters with what like loot you have, but if you're gearing, you can just like send your information into Droptimizer and then see like a lot of people say like, hey Yoda, what should I craft next? Well, you can click on Professions Epic, click 720 because you're probably gonna craft gear, whatever thing you would put on it, crit haste, you can also put haste verse, whatever, and just run it. So what upgrade is the biggest one from Mythic for me? Let's see. For my hunter, this Droptimizer is going to take a while because it has to run like one sim for every single piece of gear that you're getting. You can also run this obviously for raid loot, for dungeon loot, to see which dungeons you want to be targeting, especially at the start of the season, or if you're gearing up a character to start with. You can also check, the raid, see like what bosses are important for you, etc., etc. So we'll let this complete. Show you the results that it pops out just for crafting. Obviously, again, this will show you the biggest upgrade for your character currently on, I think I did a one target 8 minutes sim, so it'll show you the biggest upgrade for one target 8 minutes with whatever gear you have equipped. You may want to run this for multiple targets, and you all may also want to consider one other thing, which is like your overall gearing plan for your character. Like according to this, it's gonna say my helmet, or apparently, yeah, helmet. 2 helmets are my top upgrades that I can craft. However, uh, I am eventually gonna want a tier helmet. I know because the helmet is crit haste, so I'm not actually gonna do that. If I were to craft something, it would probably be a ring. Probably not a neck. It would probably be a ring. But yeah, whenever people ask me how to craft, this is how you find your biggest upgrade. But you should also keep your character's gearing plan in mind, which I am not going to go over in this situation. Next, let's go over the stat weight sim. So this one, again, as I mentioned earlier, do not use this to directly decide on what gear you're going for or what gear you're going to equip. As they mentioned, it is an outdated tool. They don't really support this. Top Gear is much better if you're trying to decide exactly what gear to run. However, what this does do is it will show you how much of a difference there is between your stats. So it's going to give you a general view. It is not going to give you information that you should use to directly choose what items you're like. If you see like, oh, haste and verse are my highest, I should take off this ring and put on a haste verse ring. Do not do that. What you should do is check Top Gear and see which one of those is higher on the sim. What this is going to do is see like, you're going to look at your stats and be like, oh look, verse is really high and I need verse to survive this keystone. Maybe I can drop a little bit of damage and pick some more verse, something like that. Some decisions like that are perfectly viable to be made, especially for tanks where like your stats, for instance, blood decay in particular, crit is completely useless basically defensively, but it is really good offensively. So you can see exactly how much damage you're losing by choosing to go other stats instead of crit. for instance, just using blood decay as an example. So that's the main use for stat weights, in my opinion. You can just see in general what's going on. One other thing to keep in mind, especially when using your stat weight sim, is that your character, we'll go back to WoW for a sec. Your character, which I use an add-on called True Stat Values, every character has diminishing returns past a certain amount. So here you can see I have 20,479 haste, and I'm 679 into the 10% penalty. So at 19,800, every point after that will give a 10% penalty for haste. So even at that breakpoint, haste is still my hunter's best stat. So I know that I can probably go for like 6,000 more haste or so without worrying too much about it. So, but you know, your stat weights will change dramatically if you're like around this breakpoint. If you take gear or change gear on and off. So do be careful of that. That's one of the reasons they suggest not using stat weights and using top gear instead. It's a very good reason. So yeah, all right. That is the basics of how to sim your character, what I use, what I know. There are some much more advanced things, such as the APL you can edit that I'm not going to go over in this video. This is kind of just This is kind of just like the basics. I know it's a real long video, but if you just watch the beginning, then you would get all the basics also. All right, that's going to be it for the video. Thanks for watching. Peace out.